minute two by my time. Hi, Ray.
Hey Vince, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
It's always good to be here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Meet Alexey.
Hey, Ray, nice to meet you.
Hey Alexey, good to meet you too. How are you doing?
Can't complain. I can't complain.
Here we go.
There you go. I thought that was an Australian saying, can't complain, but it seems like it's American as well.
I just pick up things from different parts of the world that sound good to me, so I try to use them.
Yeah, sure. And Tiffany. Are you Tiffany?
Or Scott.
Scott, right. Okay, now I got it. Yeah.
I'll try to change that.
Yep, no worries. You see where to do it?
I
Up
think
in the
it's
top, up in the top
under more.
right-hand corner of your window, you'll see mute and then dot dot dot, and under dot dot dot, you'll find rename. Yeah, I can do it for you. It's pretty easy. What's your last name, Scott?
Walker.
I'll put Scott W because we may have another Scott turn up anyway. So there you go.
Thank you for that.
No worries. Hi, Shafig. So if I remember rightly, Scott, I added you to my notification list a few days ago, didn't I?
Yes, thank you for that.
Did you check out any of the links? Did you go and have a look at any of the existing
Of course I did.
puddings?
I
Oh,
looked
great.
throughout your website, read quite a bit of it.
Yeah, right. Hi, Monique.
Yeah, I didn't have my sound on.
Right. So for Scott and Alexey, who may not know, Paul here, who's not shown his face yet, but Paul Simpson, he's another guide as well. So he comes at it from a slightly different angle to me. And Michelle. So just to give you a bit of I mean, if you've looked at a video, you might get an idea already. Look, really informal. This stuff is absolutely informal. It's worth saying, but don't make too big a deal of it. But if you, when you talk, just describe your own experience always. Sometimes it's hard not to get off into philosophical stuff, but even if you do, relate that back to your own experience. That's where the value is for you in this. And otherwise, anything goes. Don't put your hand up if you want to talk or say something, just jump in. You'll find that because of the nature of Zoom, we often over talk each other, but that soon sorts itself out pretty quickly. So yeah, don't just be relaxed. Mhm. So when there's silence, like there was just then, that's an invitation. If anybody's got anything that they want to talk about, to bring it up, any ideas, be spontaneous, or enjoy the silence. And when that silence happens, watch your mind. It's amazing how the mind ramps up a gear, goes into a higher gear the moment you've got nothing going on. You know, the mind doesn't like emptiness. It wants to be busy all the time. So, and just come back to you, Alexey. You were saying that you're working at Liberation Unleashed at the moment.
Yep.
Have you just started, or have you been at it for a little while?
With liberation
Mm.
or just add this general thing?
The general thing, I guess you've been at that for a while.
Yeah, that for a while, liberation, maybe 3 months, something like that. So not
Oh,
that
okay.
long.
No, not that long at all. Yeah. I was at it for 45 years before it happened for me.
My gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the biggest things that I've discovered working with people is that what gets in the road predominantly is expectations. What do we expect it will be like when we wake up? Now, if you look through those videos on YouTube, you'll find a clip I've made of Paul Simpson's uh, some time ago talking about what liberation is. And it's not a definitive thing by any means, but that's a brilliant video. You'll find that you'll be moved watching that and realize that it's probably not what you expect. It's a tricky one. People who have not yet woken up almost always have unrealistic expectations about what it will be like. People who have woken up will realize that it's not a thing. People who have woken up, except in a forum like this, will never say they've woken up because they realize that it can't be defined. It's a perspective. Anyway, leave that for what it is, or question it for sure. So where are you up to, Scott, in this process? Are you going through Liberation Unleashed? Have you been there?
I've actually not been to Liberation Unleashed. I've been working through the Awakening curriculum,
Okay.
and
Penilla, Todd and
exactly.
yeah.
It's an incredible resource. I am just blown away. I've done self-help, self-development for 60 years, I guess a few less than that, and have never experienced the uh, depth and I just beauty of all that she has done. I've worked through the videos of the first three fetters, and I feel like those have fallen. It's feels like a very natural and obvious sort of thing going through, and I'm curious to see when I run into something that's very surprising, but
Yeah,
so far it's
yeah,
just fun.
yeah, yeah. That is incredible resource. That's for sure.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, the time and energy she put into that is
yeah,
astounding.
yeah. Sure is.
And it's exactly what fits to my thinking and my needs. So it's been very transformational.
Great. Yeah. So you see quite clearly or recognize quite clearly that there is no controller in there running the show.
I feel like it.
Yeah, you feel
I,
like it.
I,
There you go. Good.
yeah, I have perhaps taken a bit of an odd approach in that perhaps like you, am very interested in technology and have developed an AI chatbot off of the materials that Penilla has created and have queried it and had it query me a fair amount as my guide. And yeah, it seems
Good.
totally.
So you've trained a chatbot
Mhm.
in this. Oh God,
Yes.
we have to talk about that later on. That's something I've really wanted to do. Yeah, that's great. Good stuff.
It's fascinating because I one of my uh, experiences as I've gone through the material is that a statement will seem unsustainable in itself. That oh, uh, there is no such thing as the past, and so I'll ask the chatbot to explain what that means, and it clearly explains why there is no such thing as the past, while also helping to fit with to answer the specific questions I have. If there is no past, how can I be now? It
Yeah,
comes up with what are fascinating answers.
great, great. I'm really excited about that. That's good. Good stuff. Yeah. I've had the fantasy that AI is going to be very, very helpful with this stuff. And
I think it is.
I've played with it, but never succeeded in doing much. I recently downloaded DeepSeek, and I fed it the PDF of my website, and then I asked it a couple of questions about that, and I was quite impressed. But that wasn't training it. I just did that, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was impressed with what it came up with for sure. Good
Truth
stuff.
is truth, and it's fun to be able to bounce things off at immediately the moment where a question arises, as opposed to waiting for a meeting like this or reaching out to a guide, because it's right in my consciousness at that time. And so often, as soon as I've had that experience, there's just a release of, yeah,
Yep.
obviously, moving on.
That's the bit, that release, that yeah, that oh yeah, so recognition,
Yeah.
that's when it goes from the head into the body. Yeah, oh, I got
And
goosebumps talking about
and
it.
that's my challenge. I've been very cerebral all my life. I'm
Yeah,
very analytical, and so I loved how Penilla talks about, you know, bodifying isn't the word she uses, but getting into the
yeah, yeah,
body and
yeah.
feeling the reality of it.
That see, and it's an intellectual thing to overlay, but nevertheless, when you bodify it, when it gets like that, it's a belief that changes.
Yes.
Belief
Oh yeah.
that gets dropped, or a new belief that pushes an old one out. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So where are you up to with this idea that there is no self running the show, Alexey?
It's hard to say. I just kind of came off not long ago from some really long mystic experience. It lasted almost like a week. And then I was texting my friend and I was like, oh, I think that finally this thing is over. I was like, my God, it's been so long. I was like, mm. And then this thing just ends. And I was like, oh, you have the egg on your face. So those little mystic experiences, they're just beautiful. You can't do anything about them. It's hard to kind of separate when you don't know.
Mm.
Um, I'm at a point where I'm like, I just kind of doubt, is this even real? Did people just want it so badly? that they just imagine this thing into their minds, just like I have in some capacity. And then with techniques, I don't really know what to make of them because it just I'm mainly just doing self inquiry now. The meditation hasn't resonated for me for many, many years now. Um, but that the kind of the dissatisfaction and there's this thing, this seeking or whatever people refer to, that's still there. So that's the mechanism that drives this thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings up thoughts here that's to say that an indication that you've got it, and there's no it to get, but you've got something. And I would never say that even now for me, I would never say I've got it completely. There's always more. But an indication that you've, as Scott mentioned about the first couple of fetters, and then don't worry about the fetters in particular, but it's that initial shift where a realization has happened that there isn't some internal mystical being running the show, is that when seeking drops and we adopt the attitude, not consciously, but it becomes prevalent, that we are no longer searching for something, but rather we are waiting for what will reveal itself. So searching gets displaced by discovery, by curiosity. And that's a really good indication that that initial shift has happened. And there'll be many more after that. But that's one that's worth having in the back of your mind.
Were you referring to Priscilla's awakening curriculum with the 10 fetters where she is that what I think what Scott was talking about? Yeah. Yeah, I talked to someone about that. I said, it was one of the forum starters for liberation. She said, "Why are you talking about the fetters? Are you Buddhist?" And I was like, "I guess it's true." She's like, "It's just gonna just focus on what's in front of you. Don't worry about." That's her perspective, her methodology to stuff.
Yeah, I agree. So Penilla has a different approach, if you like, to the fetters than a lot of the other more traditional ones do. But there's a couple of people that, well, the bloke who pioneered it, if you like, in the West, and he did it by going through himself. His website is simply awake, I think.
Simply always awake. I think it
Simply
is.
always
Angela, right? That's
Angela.
Angela.
No,
Yeah,
it's simply the scene.
simply
Or
the
something like that. Simply something,
Yeah.
yeah. They do tend to apparently see it as a linear process, whereas Penilla doesn't. She'll see it more like a spiral where you're working on one, you're actually working on others as well. So it's not. So the thing with the fetters, and it's really important to, I think, to put that into perspective, it's just another tool. It's just a way of looking at things. So it does have a kind of a hierarchical aspect to it, but it's not a big deal to do that. But it would be accurate to say that the more subtle stuff, what I said, there's things will continue after that initial awakening, and it gets more and more subtle the further you go. And that the fetters are a useful tool for some things, not for everything by any means, but for some. So yeah, keep that in mind and don't get obsessed by it like a lot of people do, because it does offer structure, and it does offer it's not meant to, but it does offer a way of measuring where you're up to. kind of thing that people just love to grab a hold of and put a badge on themselves, you know. Yeah. So when you heard Scott say, "Oh, I think I've broken the first 3 fetters," you know, there's this idea of progress. Well, progress, this is not a linear process. Believe me, it's not. So when you've broken the first 3, you know, they're kind of grosser ones. And so the just to put that into context for you, the first one is recognizing that there's no self running the show. The second one is doubt. And that's an interesting one in itself. Doubt, usually people will say doubt about whether they've seen that there is no self running the show. But in my experience, most people's doubt is about whether they're awake or not whether or not they're, so they can be quite clear about the fact that there's no self running the show, but they still have doubt about whether they've woken up. That's because they've still got this idea about what waking up is. And then the third one is rites and rituals. And that's, you know, people tend to say, well, that goes with the first 2 pretty much. Well, it doesn't, because we'll cycle back to the third one many times through the process, because those rites and rituals are, I mean, there's big gross ones like, do you go to church so that you'll go to heaven? That's a rite and ritual that's really obvious. But there's much more subtle ones like, do you get upset if somebody sits in your chair? That's a rites and ritual. Or do you want your knife and fork to be put in a particular way, and do you get upset if it's not? And so on and so on. You know, there's a lot of little internal kind of rites and rituals that we don't realise because they don't get triggered, or when they do get triggered, we just take it as normal until we start on this path, and then we go, oh, okay, something's going on there. You know, I think it should be that way. You know, that's a rite and ritual one. Anyway. And then they go right through to the higher fetters, the 5 to 10. Those ones are much more subtle, or 6 to 10 rather. 4 and 5 are pretty gross. They're desire and ill will. That's yeah. But you can see, for example, with desire, it's obviously got a foundation of a belief about how things should be, or that they can be. I want this rests on the foundation that I could have it. If I want hard enough, I could have it. So we get, and that's a really interesting one. So you get this infantile, really, and I'm not meaning to moralise about that. I'm just describing that it's something that gets developed at an infant level or a very young age, that wanting is all it requires to get something. If I want it hard enough, I'll get it. That's obviously, it's really, when you look at it as an adult, it's obvious that that's wanting has got no connection with getting, no direct connection with getting anyway. It's not the wanting that results in getting, but it rests on the foundation that it's possible. So we carry a lot of this stuff from childhood through about how the world works, and it's crazy, but we never look at it in order to see the ridiculous nature of it. It's only when we do look at it that becomes obvious. Anyway, the other thing that I want to say to you all is jump in, you know, like it doesn't matter where you're up to or not up to, it doesn't matter. Every time you open your mouth, it's a value to somebody else, even if it's not to yourself. So do jump in and do have comments and do ask about anything that comes up.
I might throw something out.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
And that is, as I've worked through Penilla's idea or videos, the information all seems obviously right. But I'm guessing that people on this call disagree with some aspects or are concerned or worried about things. I'm curious for kind of contrasting views. Um, is the world really simply non-dual, or do some of you question that? Is there really no self, or do some of you disagree with that? I'm curious to hear.
So tell us what your thoughts are about that, Scott.
Well, it through the years of the mostly study that I have done, and in fact, in the past year or so, I've focused a lot on consciousness and the nature of reality, and whether it's a consciousness-based reality that we live in to begin with. So the ideas that, again, I'm very focused on Penilla's stuff just because that's what I've been doing for the past month. It all fits very well. And so it seems so obvious to me. And yet, if it were obvious, I would think that most of the world would have come across it by now and agreed with it. And that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm surprised that it's taken me 61 years of living to come across it. And so I'm just, I suppose the things that might be more controversial, even the simple idea of the self, whether there is one or not. Does everyone all agree on that?
Okay, let me what that stimulated for me was something, and others have probably heard this stuff before and so on, but it's worth repeating. This stuff is all about your reality, not the reality. Right, so let's put it another way. There is relative, that is relative to you, what we call you, that meat suit with the label called Scott, right? And then there is maybe an absolute reality, right? And that absolute reality is unknowable to you. As a human, your brain is too puny, totally incompetent to recognize the absolute, if there is such a thing. We don't know. We can presume there is. But here's a big deal. Recognizing when we logically arrive at a conclusion is just a story. It's a mental process that has no value other than to stimulate a response in us. And what we've learned as a really young person is that if we tell ourselves the right story, it makes us feel good. And that's how the mind has become our Donald Trump. It's an idiotic process that runs the show, it seems. But in fact, it's living in a fantasy world, and it has nothing to do with what is actual, except that we respond, and that is actual. But it's a short-term thing, and it bears nothing in reality to what is actually going on. It's got its own little world that it lives in, so to speak. So there's another thing. When I said about seeking dropping as a indication that those first fetters have shifted somewhere, and I'm not exactly sure where it will happen, and may be different for everybody, probably is, and that is that there will also appear an attitude that says something along the lines that questions don't need answers. If questions arise, that's just the mind being stimulated by something, and a recognition that if we do get an answer, it's going to be something that's made up. It's created. Every answer is a creation of the mind, and it's totally irrelevant to the way things actually work. So it's like you could, yeah, and it's almost literal to say it's just a bit of mental masturbation. It's just a way of making ourselves feel good. So whether there really is a world and how it really works out there is irrelevant. If there is, and quantum physics has things to say about that, maybe there isn't. Maybe it doesn't exist until you think about it. And then that arises all sorts of other questions about, like, how come you and I both look at the same thing and see it as something substantial, even though we recognise that your perception, your interpretation of it is different to mine. Yet we both could agree that there is something there. You know, interesting question, but there's no answer. Right? So there's in this stuff, you're going to find lots of paradoxes, lots of contradictions that exist side by side, and they do. Right? So, for example, you were born alone, you're going to live alone, and you're going to die alone. No matter how close you are to somebody else, you're still alone. Yet, you will discover, if you go far enough in this path, that you and other are the same. I wouldn't say the same entity, but that takes us closer to what you'll discover than to say you're two parts. You're not two parts. You'll very likely experience, probably temporarily, at least, that you are it and it is you. You are them and they are you. It's an experience. It doesn't make sense to say it, but when you experience it, you'll know it. So, because of your analytical background, Scott, and the way you developed, through so you have a lifetime of conditioning, a lifetime of being influenced by experience, right? Including, the DNA stuff that's there, but also your actual experience has developed things uniquely for you. But because yours has been, as you mentioned, fairly analytical, thought-centered, that's what's going to arise for you until it doesn't, or until it lessens. It probably always will, but you'll develop a different relationship to your thoughts. And I would suggest, in the early days, it's worth saying all of your thoughts are bullshit. Not one of them is worth anything. You don't even need thought to stop you from walking in front of a bus. Your body knows how to do that by now. Yeah. Later on, thoughts will have a different use. But in the early days, it's worth saying none of them are worth paying any attention to. Always go back to the body. That's what's real.
If I could react to that.
Yes, absolutely, do. Don't ask.
That's one of the things that, in fact, I took to the AI chatbot, because my work is analytics, literally Google Analytics and other stuff. And so to say that all thoughts are BS, I understand exactly how that is true. And then I use thoughts to accomplish something useful.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. They're not. Don't. So so I'll have to refine it a little bit. What I said was all thoughts about the way the world works are bullshit at this stage. Not later on, but no, certainly when it comes to work or when it comes to planning something, if it needs to be planned, and a lot of what we think needs planning doesn't actually, it will just simply happen. You know, you don't plan to walk across the room, you just do it. No thoughts required. You can't say, I did it. You can only say, it happened. So, yes, no, I'm not meaning to say that your work thoughts are bullshit. They have a relevance for sure. Yeah.
Though they are sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, well, the others will intrude on that, I guess, as well, you know. Yeah. If we're attempting something and it doesn't work and we get frustrated, the other stuff will come in big time. Yeah.
I remember when Vince told me that the first time that I had a one-on-one with him. And at first I thought he's exaggerating. You know, it can't be, right? And then I saw the resistance. And then after a while, I realized, wow, that is a big relief. Because my brain was on all the time, so many stories. And I always prided myself for being an active listener. So I was also an active listener of my thoughts. It was exhausting. But if you can get to a place where you can accept that as a starting point, like really accept it and then sit with it and just relax with it, it'd be interesting to see what happens. Because that's the one thing I'm noticing when I listen to these groups is how the thoughts are dominating so much. And from my own experience, that's the one thing that gets in the way. You know, and it's not that you can erase them, they're always there. But when you realize, you know, like Vince has said before, you know, it's like a book and you can choose to just look at the title or open it. When you realize you have that option and you just do it for fun, you know, you just see the thoughts, even the ones that seem very brilliant. And I think anyone in these group chats are very highly intelligent, and you just let it go. For me now, it's such a relief. It's such a relief. And it's like I can feel my whole nervous system over the last, you know, few months just relaxing. Because I don't have to engage. It's always there, but it's like it used to be like right here. And now it feels like it's just in the back. Shows up, whoop, I have something to tell you. It's interesting, Monique. And, you know, of course, sometimes I look, you know, but I can do it with a little more lightness.
Monique, Alexey and Scott and maybe Michelle haven't heard of that story about thoughts and books. Do you want to tell them that one?
Oh, yes. Okay, this is my interpretation of what Vince had shared with me, of course. I turned it around. I think I started having a better understanding of where thoughts live. And Vince had said, you know, you can imagine the thoughts as being living in your backpack, a black backpack. And they come out, you know, like a book with a title, and it shows up looking for your attention. And most people will open the book and then they want to read it because it's very alluring. It's a story. It's all your stories of everything that's happened to you, all your impressions, all your experiences, and then when you do that, for me, when I did that, and I imagined that, I could see myself getting completely caught up in my own story, and then it just one thought would bring up another thought, etc. But what happened over time is I realized that I saw myself wearing that black backpack, and the thoughts would come up, and instead of being in the front of me, they would be in the back, and then the titles would, try to get my attention, and I would sometimes look at it because I'm curious, and then actually I thought I was making a choice, but at some point I lost interest, so I would just let it go, and it would go back in the backpack. But for me, the big difference was that it was just in the background. It became, and it still is, it feels like it's in the background now, most of the time, instead of being in my head, in front of my eyes, everywhere, in everywhere as part of me, as if it's happening, as if it's real. So it's just a mental thing. When I start getting distracted by it, I imagine it going back in the backpack, and I don't ignore it. Like I don't pretend it's not there, and sometimes I get really amused. I don't even resist it. Sometimes it's, it wants my attention, but it's mentally, it's just always in the backpack. It's just there. It's resting. It's acknowledged. I know you're there. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just a little fun little trick, and it doesn't feel as serious because seriously, like I have so much imagination. I have so many stories. I mean, I actually really love my little backpack at times, and sometimes I definitely open it up, but it's not. It doesn't have the heaviness, and it doesn't distract as much unless I wanted to. Actually, I don't control it. So no, I just don't control it. It's just there.
Mm.
Yeah. Definitely not the boss of it, but
Good stuff. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about is our relationship to our thoughts, and kind of because they're our thoughts, they have a special, they mean more than somebody else's thoughts. And so and thoughts, because they're you and they know you in and out, they know exactly where your buttons are and they know exactly how to push them. And so they can be so, Monique said alluring, I would say seductive, but both are true. They just have a way of sucking you in, kind of thing. And they exist. Well, I mean, metaphorically at least, they. So when you watch your thoughts, they're not there, and then they are there, and then they're not there. Then there's just a memory of them, and it's like you don't know where they come from. They're there for such a short time, in actual fact, that you couldn't even measure the time. They're there for 0.0001 of a millisecond, and then there's just the memory of them that we relate to. And they're gone. We don't know where they come from, and we don't know where they go. And they just happen. It's not if you look at your thoughts, you can see that they just happen. You don't know what your next one is going to be. There's definitely no control about it. It just happens. So this idea of imagining them as a book that floats past, right, and you see the title, right? It's like that title is always going to be written in a seductive way, and it invites you to get into it. And when you do get into it, you're living out the story. You've opened the book and you're in the content of it, and you're living it out. And that's when emotions are running the show at that point. And by recognizing that you don't actually have to open every book, you don't have to engage with every single thought that turns up. It's not like it's a choice, right? And so that brings me to something else here that's really important. Doing, right? The idea of doing something rests on the illusion that you've got control and that you can achieve. And so what we're talking about here, although it sounds like we talk about doing this, not engaging with or not doing, right, that kind of stuff, it's better, the way I would put it, and a good way for you to look at it, is they're simply seeds that we've cast out, and that some of them will germinate and some won't. And if the ones that don't, well, we'll keep casting them out, and eventually they will, hopefully. But essentially, although we talk like we're saying do this and don't do that, we're not. We don't want effort involved in this stuff. We want a discovery that that's a possibility. That's all. So any idea of putting effort into it and working hard is counter to what we're looking for. Life happens. It's not the result of a doing. That's just a mental overlay that comes along later. Right? You walk across the floor and walking happens. What we call walking, one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, steering around the coffee table, not banging your shins on it. All of that happens automatically. You learned how to do that a long time ago, and it just happens. Right? And sure, you can get to the other side of the room and stop and look back and say, I did that, but that's just a story. The reality was it happened. And when you sometimes, like I did day before yesterday, I kicked my toe on the coffee table as I walked across. That also just happened. Right? So there you go.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, it sometimes thoughts are very seductive. It's so easy to trick yourself. I actually had an experience a few days ago. I was looking online and found a 10-day silent retreat, and I kind of put it aside, but put my name on a waiting list. And I thought that'd be great, you know. And then I had this experience. Doesn't really matter, but there was an opening while I was meditating, and it was fairly intense, and it was actually, yeah, it was really intense and wonderful, and I felt this expansion, that thing that happens. And after that experience, I took that as, oh, that's my clue. Oh, I've had this experience, this expansion. Oh, yes, I should do this retreat. So it went from a thought of this would be, something that's available maybe, to I'm going to do this. Then I get a note saying you're accepted. And what happened after that is I didn't realize that I had been building up a story based on past experience, which I had gone to a retreat, when I was 21, and I had this, oneness with nature experience and all of that. Something that I had never forgotten. I started thinking, so here's the thinking, Monique, oh, if I go there, I'm going to increase my chances of having more of these experiences. It's going to be wonderful, and I'm like, I'm giddy. And anyways, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who I mentioned before, who's done a lot of work, and she kind of called me on it. She says, Monique, what are your intentions? What are you looking for? And I couldn't tell her the truth. I wanted more of that. But she knew me, and she says, whether you go or not, Monique, doesn't matter. But be honest with yourself and look at whether you're going there because you want a distraction, because you want something, Anyways, to make a long story short, I realized after that I had gone on a whole trip in my mind about because something happened and wanting more. And actually, I realized at that point that I was trying to make something happen. And so it was a no, I'm not doing that. And it was a no because I'm starting to see that awakening is not about those psychedelic experiences, that they have been their gifts, but it's just about being present, just being with what's right here, right now. And for me, because of it's a habit. Something's going well. I want more of it. The most important thing for me in that was just to see that. In that moment, I thought I was making something happen. I thought I was creating the environment to make it happen. I was really believing it. Believe me, I read the whole book on that one. And of course, my pride was, bruised after that. But later came gratitude and a sense of relief that I hadn't gone down that path again, trying to be a seeker, wanting to be in both worlds, and it doesn't work. So it's like even in these, like if I said that to anyone else, they'd say, of course, go to the retreat. Actually, most spiritual people would say, of course, 10-day retreat. How cool. Look at you.
Yeah. So I'm interested, Monique, when you experience that little pride thing, did amusement turn up?
Well, only after, because the pride really came up.
It hurt for a moment.
It was a judgment. Yeah, it was like, oh, Monique, you did it again. Like you would say it to a kid, you did it again. You start recognizing you did it again. You fell for yourself.
Yeah.
The whole story.
And that's a big thing. Seeking will drop and then come back always.
Yeah.
I have this belief that it's a human thing. I don't know for sure, but I have this idea that no matter how good we feel, we always want more.
It was so intense in me. That's where I say it was a bit embarrassing. But you're right. And actually, the seeker came back. That's what you said. That's exactly. Yeah, the seeker is like a snake. That's seductive too. I don't know why. It's just, seeker is like a distraction.
Yeah. So I said seeking comes back.
Seeking.
You said the seeker. Now that's interesting and accurate probably, because if seeking does come back, it rests on the idea that there is a me here to be improved.
Identity, the seeker.
Yeah. That's subtle again, but it's very good. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And it brings up something for me here too, and that is the idea that if life happens, and this is a metaphor, of course, if life happens and there's nobody to make decisions or choices about what happens, then for me that translates into the experience that is a somewhat conscious still for me at the moment, where life offers me what to do next. Life will jump up in front of me and say, I'm here, do this, kind of thing. And that's how I go through my day. It's like I'm willingly giving over to what I call life, to circumstances that present themselves as life, the idea that's what I'm going to do now. Whether I'm going to eat, or whether I'm going to go to the toilet, or whether I'm going to do a job, or whatever it is, it's what's in front of me. I don't have to plan my day unless I've got something in my calendar. And then, of course, that's what's in front of me. Coming to these meetings, right? My calendar says, Vince, 7 o'clock, you've got a meeting. That's what's in front of me. That's how I work my day. I say that, they're just words, of course. So here's another thing that I've mentioned many times, and that is that language is a problem here. Language is really difficult because there's no way, language comes from common usage, and it evolves from common usage. And, the majority of people in the world live in a conceptual world. And so language has evolved in that way. So consequently, when the words we say here, when we say I and me, it's just language. We don't mean that there's an actual I or a me there, but sometimes we do, and that can be revealing as well. So language is also useful in the sense that it reveals stuff that's going on in us. Yeah. I was going to make a point, but I've forgotten what it was, which happens frequently here.
The other thing I've noticed, Vince and Monique, I just want to just appreciate just the honesty with which you explore. I so appreciate that about you. The other thing I've noticed, Vince, is that this distinction between like prior to awakening, there's doing and there's effort to it because it comes out of conceptual thought. And then later it's kind of you're still doing, but it's so effortless because there's no mind involved at all. And like you say, it's just the next thing arises and you're doing that. And while you're exerting energy, it's really effortless in that sense.
I woke up last night. This is happening a lot. I was always a very sound sleeper, but in the last couple of months, I wake up in the middle of the night and then I get this clarity. But as you're speaking, Irene, what came up in the middle of the night is awakening is happening. And I really wanted to explore this with the group. Because again, the language thing, right? It's like there's a sense that you're awakened or you're not. Questions always asked, are you awakened or not? And I may be completely wrong, but what was coming up is awakening is happening. And even what you just said, Irene, to me, it feels like awakening is happening all the time. And it's just, it's like, let's say for me, my emotions are which used to be much more repressed, are now being released. Awakening is happening. My need for control, when I say that's the old I, the need to control, or a sense of control, or thinking that you control, is vanishing gradually. But it's like, it feels more like it feels like things are awakening in me.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether I'm awakened or not. Or walking in nature, the colors feel more vivid, the smells are more notice, the blending of it, of all my senses more one, everything. Yeah, so it feels like it's just happening. I want to know what you thought of that.
For me, it fits in really well, and it's something that I realised myself, that I'm much more inclined to experience what I would describe as a full range of emotions. I cry so easily these days.
Me too.
I laugh so easily. I don't think about what I'm going to say. It just comes out. Sometimes I put my foot in it by doing that, and that's okay when that happens. So
Yeah.
that full range, it's a logical thing, and so I don't know how much it actually means, but what I just describe it as, the filters drop. I no longer have to protect a self. I'm no longer concerned about what people think of me. So as a result of not having those inhibitions, those filters, I experience a much wider range of emotions than I used to.
Yes. And yesterday, I was listening to the recording from yesterday, and you mentioned something, again, I'm such a bad quoter, but about more, if anything, awakening makes you, your humanness or something like that,
Yes.
much more alive, is what I heard for myself.
Yeah.
And that's more my experience that's happening. And it doesn't even matter what it's called to me, except that this came up for me. And part of me feels like if that's true, then everyone is awakening, to their level of their awareness. Or even, sorry, I'm remembering things from yesterday, but Dennis, when you said about having these pictures of memories of when you were young, and you shared, how that made you feel. That's another thing. I'm getting more like these snapshots of the past, and they're not just pictures. They're vivid, and they feel like they're happening now, as if I was in that body of the little girl, or good or bad. Listening to someone the other day, and that person is expressing something, and something comes up in me that in the moment my mind is saying it's in the past, but the feeling is it's happening right now. And even though it was a fairly constrictive experience, there wasn't like the judgment. There was sadness, there was even pain, but it was just, it's like the brain is saying, no, that's your past. And I even use a language that used to be that way, but the experience was happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
That
Yeah.
that felt like a big one. I couldn't understand it. It was the last time I was online. I couldn't speak during that time because all this was happening.
Yep. Yep. So the story that I use with that one that appears is that we all have our own infant still inside us, our own young person, our own whatever age, every age that we've experienced is probably there. But but when you mentioned about being more fully human, it's like we get born and the level of I want to say corruption, but okay, the level of influence that our environment and our DNA has is there, but it's somewhat minimal, let's say. And then as we go through life experiencing, we learn an attitude. We learn how to relate to the world. And we learn that from our parents in the first couple of years, and we learn it from the parents of our peer group, because via our peer group, that we get that when we go to school. And so, and I just call it corruption, that we get less and less human and more ideal oriented as we go through life. And a lot of that stuff we forget, and it's held in the body. And again, it's just a metaphor. I don't know the actuality of it. You might call it muscle memory or whatever, but it's held in the body, and it's still there today. If it hasn't been seen through, or displaced, or however you want to put it, So so when we're going through this path, and something like this gets stimulated, normally for most people, it would be an unpleasant or an uncomfortable experience when it gets triggered, and that we've developed ways of disengaging with it, and we don't even realize. We might suddenly experience anger, for example. That's a classic one, and that anger is a way of us distracting from that unpleasant feeling. And when we're going through this path and we recognize that, hang on, that's not something we need to avoid, that's something that's being shown to us. And when we recognize it as it is, we can see the infantile nature of it, probably. And the consequence is that the moment we see it, it gets changed, it gets dropped, it gets displaced by an adult perspective. And so we get freed from that thing that we've been carrying around. Whereas before we get on this path, the whole thing is to end it because it's unpleasant. We want to finish it. We want to fix it. And we just have developed ways of doing that, whether it be alcohol or food or activity. They're just ways of avoiding this kind of stuff often that we've developed.
There's something about the very human experience of awakening that is deeply touching to me, because I think that was the thing that I was more afraid of losing. You look at a lot of people who say they're spiritual or awaken, and sometimes there's a sense that the emotions are shut out of it, that that human aspect. At least it's, again, that's from the old brain. I used to think this way, but I recognize that whatever it is that's happening right now, and I can feel it, I can feel this vibration happening right now. That it's not that, it's as I started seeing last night, is that everything, it's the perfect word, everything awakens. Everything comes to life. And you have a portal to access it. That's what it feels like.
What are you waking up from?
From being asleep, from holding, from, kind of protecting.
Was it sleep or was it a dream? A waking dream?
It feels like a dream, a fantasy, the world that I created, that I imagined, that I thought was the world.
So you're not identifying with your thoughts anymore. They're not really your thoughts, are they?
Sometimes I get caught up in it. Sometimes they surprise me. Like the story I said about thinking I wanted something. But
But you were describing earlier the way they seem like they're in a backpack now. That's big.
Yeah, no, they're in the backpack. They're not leading me most of the time.
You're not living the dream in front of your face all the time.
No, that's the difference.
Good.
Mm-hmm. It's such a relief. That's a very heavy backpack.
It creates all kind of emotional turmoil when you believe it.
Yeah. It's exhausting. That's what I noticed. It's when I still do get caught in thought. It has a sneaky way at times. I can't say that I don't, but when it's not the main meal, the main course, when it's not in front of me all the time, it's such a relief.
When you
And
say
it
you notice
makes,
how much alive, how everything else is so alive, do you see that when you're not totally caught up in the thought train, you are now noticing what is actually happening?
absolutely. It's not changed. I mean, I've shared before going on this walk, and it's the same walk most days. And then one day all of a sudden I'm seeing, a million things in front of me. It's the same walk. I was sure when I noticed it, I thought it's not possible that wasn't there before, but it's like a field that's open to the ocean. It's got all kinds of old logs. I realized after that, no, the logs did not move. But definitely things are opening up. I'm seeing details. I'm seeing things that I haven't seen that were right in front of me.
That's the magic.
That's the
Cool.
magic. But it's that simple. See, when you say magic, people expect like a magic trick. It's not. It's like grass leaves that have these little pearls of water, and the sun is shining on it, it glistens. That's magic. But when you don't see it, there's no magic.
So would you say, well, I've told the story many times about how most people, and I'm not denigrating them by saying this, just a description as I see it, my story, is that most people go through the world relating to what they imagine is in front of them. And then as we wake up, we start to see what is actually there. And when we do that, the details expose themselves and the awe that is there in the most mundane things. They were mundane and then they become quite magical because we go, wow, look at that. Oh, it's just amazing the form and the structure and the shape and the color and the intensity and the details just shout out how alive and beautiful they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've seen myself try to describe something to someone who,
You can't, yeah.
and like I hadn't even started, and I realized, no, stop there. But again, I mean, it seems to me when I was really, really, really young, there was that magic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So this to me is like, it feels like a full circle in a way. It's just, there wasn't the understanding, it was just a natural state. Because I had that with nature for as long as, from the day I could walk, probably.
Mm.
So
I need to step away. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye, Scott. I think my idea of awakening is really changing. I don't think it's out there. I think it's just right here.
Mm. How are things for you, Ray? You look very serious at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, these pictures that we're just hearing must be pretty frustrating for somebody who doesn't experience them.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely frustration there, to some extent, but at the same time, there's some, I don't know, there's some joy there as well. Just that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I, yeah, I've got, today's been a hard day, and yesterday was kind of a hard one too. Um, so I mean, I'm moving out at the end of this week, and of my home because my wife and I are getting divorced, and it's so it's been a lot of kind of thoughts, like kind of troubling thoughts, just feeling unprepared and feeling, what feels like kind of sadness and despair. And I don't know, like there's definitely a drive to both identify with my suffering, to be like, hello, everybody, I'm suffering deeply, and also to try and fix it somehow, which, is part of the reason why I was like, I really want to try and make it to the meeting today so that, I don't know, just like maybe it'll give me some kind of escape to be thinking about something else, or just, yeah, I don't really know.
Okay.
So that's kind of, yeah.
So what
Well,
comes to mind for me straight away is this story I've got about grief and suffering. Okay, and I'm repeating myself, but that's okay. Grief is sadness with stories hanging off it. And those stories are always about how it shouldn't be this way, how it should be different. And sadness is essentially the sensation component to that one. So if you've got sadness and you've got stories about how it should be different, then you're in grief. But they're not necessarily linked up. They don't have to belong together. So if you were to just experience sadness about the situation, not because of, but the recognition that there is sadness there, and experience that sadness, you'll discover that there's a sweetness to that sadness. It's sad, but it's also got this other element to it that we never notice, especially if we're in grief, because if we're in grief, the stories dominate how it shouldn't be, how it should be different, etc. But if we can allow those grief stories to go into the background and just experience the sadness, you will discover a really, I won't say pleasant, it's not pleasant, but it's a sweetness is the only word that comes to mind. That's what I've experienced. Sweetness is there in that. And it's like, oh, it's a relief, a release, that sadness. If it develops into tears as well, it's an additional release. And then it is relating to what is actual, whereas the grief is up in the head, and the emotions that come from that are definitely not mandatory. But anyway, that's something. So I heard you say a couple of times in those few words that you said about fixing it, ending it. Yeah. And that, of course, requires effort and doing, planning. And that, of course, rests on the idea that there's somebody that can do that. And until you discover that there's nobody that can do that, of course, that's where you're going to go. But recognizing that that's where it takes you is where the value is in this. So as much as this is a really difficult situation for you, I get that. Nobody would want it. Nobody would seek it. But it is there. It is also an opportunity for you. And it's an opportunity you may never get again in your life to experience what drives the emotions that are underneath all of this. So nobody's ever going to say you're going to be happy about it, but it is an opportunity for you to discover things about yourself. And that doesn't require effort, and that doesn't require you to be focused on fixing anything. In fact, they're things that get in the road of this discovery for you. I know you've heard all this stuff before, of course, but yeah. We'll keep casting these seeds out until they germinate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm when I talk about control and trying to fix things and getting caught up in these thoughts to I mean, I know that there's a certain futility in thinking that way. Can't really seem to shake it.
Okay, don't shake it. Yeah, that you don't need to shake it. You know that, and so there's a portal for you. That knowing of the futility in it will lead you to something else. Right? So you'll not get away from, you'll not transcend the futility. You'll go through the futility into another open space, a different open space, where the futility then will be behind you. So again, that's a useful thing, that you recognize that futility. Don't dismiss it. Dive into it. Oh, what does this futility feel like? Where do I feel it in the body? And in that, there is discovery. And that will happen or not. You don't need to put effort into it. that kind of puts you in a corner, doesn't it? There's nowhere to go and nothing to say and nothing to do.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing that does come up, or I mean, did come up, is like there's a lot of anxiety about how I'm going to do this move. And I think both my soon to be ex-wife and my mother-in-law are both like, I think getting understandably concerned that I'm probably not as prepared for it. I mean, I'm not really prepared for the move, and they're trying to like help. They're just trying to like help sort of move things along. Like, why don't we start talking about what furniture you're gonna send over there, and when are we gonna start talking to the kids about what's happening? And I'm totally unprepared for all of it. And so I mean that's where the mind goes sometimes when I'm
Sure. So let's examine that for a moment then.
hmm,
There is potential for some planning here,
hmm,
right? So they would be what you would call useful thoughts about where to go, how to do it, how to physically organize what you need to do. But that doesn't need to be huge or overwhelming. That's almost an ancillary kind of aspect to this. The
hmm.
actual doing of it, that will happen. I was going to say or not, but it's inevitable that it will happen at this stage, isn't it? But something else is going on, it seems to me, that's been covered up by this thing. There is reluctance. I sense a difficulty that's unnecessary in that it feels to me like I imagine that you're dragging 1,000-pound weight behind you as you go through life at the moment. That you've got this heaviness about you, that the whole thing is overwhelming almost, and that's where the value is for you in recognizing that. You know, nobody would ever say this is going to be easy or emotionally easy or frivolous. It's not. But the heaviness is unnecessary. Right? The actual move, when you think about it, is you will walk out the door, you will get in your car, and you will drive to your new lodging. If you've already got that, is that already arranged, organised?
Uh, I'm still working on it, but it's mostly arranged.
All right. So you can see that once that arrangement has happened, it's no different to getting out and going in your car to work. You don't even think about that, do you? You just do it every day when you go to work. So you go to your new lodging, that's it. You go to your new lodging. In itself, that's no big deal. But this weight you're dragging behind you is the reluctance, the resistance to it. Is there still part of you that says this doesn't need to happen or this might not happen?
Hmm.
What's the nature of that weight, that's the resistance, that heaviness?
I think it would probably characterize it as this is going to be extremely unpleasant, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that can make it unpleasant, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the anticipation of a future situation.
Right.
Um,
Ray,
Mm.
I'm wondering, can you recall a situation in childhood where it was so overwhelming and you felt just kind of shocked by it all? Anything
mm,
come to mind?
I mean, yeah, like a couple of things come to mind, but yeah, I don't know. Those are, I would almost have to like search for those because they're not something I think about nowadays. Um, but yeah, my childhood was tumultuous, I'd say.
I'm just wondering if these circumstances that you're in are triggering an earlier situation that is seeking resolution through this. You know, where there was some stuckness or something didn't get resolved, and these circumstances are triggering that in order for for all of that to come to the surface.
Mm.
If it doesn't resonate, that's fine, but I was just wondering if there was something that came to mind.
Um, yeah, I mean nothing specific. Um, yeah, I think it's just I've had a strange relationship with my parents, just even growing up in a lot of different ways. And so there's an aspect of like loneliness where I almost felt like my marriage and my family was going to be like the cure for this loneliness that I'd been feeling all along, would be resolving it in some way.
Mm.
And now that, the kind of my hope for that is,
Dashed.
yeah, it's dashed for sure. And yeah, and that's just really very, I mean, it's painful, but it's the loneliness that I think is just starting to come back. Um, if there's anything that's unresolved, that's probably what it is. But that's just been an ongoing sort of theme in my life, I guess.
Mm.
Not so much one event. Um,
Can you see what Irene's saying, that this situation has triggered that for you?
mhm.
That has always been there, but buried under the hope that your family and your wife and kids will change that for you, and that
Yeah,
as a result of the circumstances now, it's out in the open again. It's turned up. Yeah. So
yeah,
uh, it's not to dismiss this situation, but it's to say that a lot of what you're feeling, a large amount of what you're feeling, isn't to do with just this. It's to do with a lifetime of accumulation of what you are now recognizing. That loneliness that's incredible that you can recognize that. That's a big thing. I have, and it's just me and my story, but I have no concerns about your future loneliness. You won't be lonely. There'll be plenty of people in your life. And because of this stuff that you're going through here at these groups and what you're going through, the circumstances of this thing, you'll be way more open to connection with people than you ever were in your life before. So I don't have any concerns about future loneliness, but I can see what you're saying, that this is a concern for you. It's not a logical concern. It's not an intellectual concern. It's an emotional uh, issue.
yeah. I mean that all resonates. And it's even, with this loneliness, I'm looking less at the circumstances around me. Like, are there people actually in my life? And I'm kind of looking at, looking at myself, like, why do I always feel lonely? Like, even when there are people who are trying to be there for me, like, I'm seeing it as there is something going on with how I'm perceiving the situation. It's less about the external circumstances and more about the internal ones. Is kind of
Absolutely. And that's really good to see. Yeah, big time. And of course, I want you to get to discover something through this stuff, because I don't want you in the future hooking up with somebody just to fix the loneliness and end up having another divorce because you're not really compatible, because you only got together because of loneliness. I want you to be much more authentic with yourself and make a connection with people in the future that has a different basis, not a result of emptiness, but rather a result of fullness.
yeah.
So this is an amazing opportunity you've got, as painful as it is, for you to clear out this stuff that you've been carrying with you all your life.
I guess the thing about it that makes it feel somewhat overwhelming is the that it doesn't really feel fixable. Like I guess in the moment when I mean, it's a thought, it's a story, of course, but when I'm feeling that loneliness and that sort of disengagement, um, the fact that it has more to do with me than it does with my circumstances almost makes the problem feel just more unsolvable,
Mm.
you know?
Yep, yep. Well, it's not fixable and it is unsolvable.
Mm.
So where does that leave us? Doesn't leave us stuck with it. It's like what we want is for it to dissolve, and only the mind will turn around and look at the dissolved issue and say, "Oh, that was fixed." But the reality is that as it is seen through, it changes, and it's not fixing it. That's just a way of describing it from a certain perspective. So the intent to fix it is the wrong attitude. But the discovery of what's actually happening there is what we really need to immerse ourselves in. And that will just happen. That's not anything you can do, but it will happen by that. So recognizing that there is the thought or even the feeling that it's unsolvable, that's great. That's a really good thing. That's a good start. Recognizing that, not getting involved in the story of, oh, woe is me because it's unfixable, but recognizing that the idea that it's unfixable turned up. And then, of course, we realize that it's not something that needs fixing. It's something that will just dissolve itself or not. I mean, it's a bit of a subtle thing. Can you see the difference between it just going or changing into something else as opposed to working at it and fixing it? There's a little difference in the words, but a huge difference in the action.
Yeah. Like effort and control, I feel like are
Yeah.
the distinction.
So here's the thing. We have no idea what the future is going to bring. We can only imagine things about it. But for you to feel the way you're feeling, part of you says, my imaginings are real. Is it possible to be open to whatever the future might bring and to be unconcerned about that? Unconcerned means having a trust that it will be okay. Or having a trust that if it's not okay, that's also okay. I know that sounds a bit weird, but yeah. So can you see that part of you believes these fantasies about the future?
Yeah.
And is it obvious to you when we say it that we can't know what the future will bring?
Yeah.
That took a little while for you to agree to that one.
Yeah.
Does part of you disagree with that?
No, it feels like the part of me that believes I know what's gonna happen. Like I don't have any control over that, you know? The part of me that believes like all these frightening and scary things that are potentially going to be happening in the future, I kind of can't help but believe them
Mm.
right now. And I recognize that, they're possible, but it's not a foregone conclusion. I have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
Mm. So here's an interesting one. So you recognize, in spite of that intellectual acknowledgement that you can't know what's going to happen, that part of you still believes, right?
Yeah.
Now we don't need to fix that. We don't need to kill that part of you that believes. What we need to do is acknowledge it and look at it. And when we look at it, we'll discover that it's ludicrous. It's crazy. But we won't get to that recognition of how crazy it is until we actually look at it. Right? So we mustn't dismiss that part of you believes in it. We must accept that and look at it. And the closer we get to it, the more we realize that, hang on, how come I believe what I clearly know is not possible? So we're not looking for an answer as much as we're just looking at the details of the part of you that does believe that. And you'll discover that there's something else underneath that. There's something else there that says, this part of me that believes is the part of me that wants to believe. And why would I want to believe in disaster stories? And you'll discover something about that. So even the idea of what's obviously not the case has a reality to it. So we're just looking at more and more detail, getting closer and closer to what's going on. Doesn't have to make sense. You'll probably find, you may well find, that the part of you that believes is the child part in you, and the part of you that clearly recognizes it's not possible to know is the adult part of you. But the child part of you goes back to when we were discovering life, and we had all sorts of fantasies that we were checking out, and for some reason that part of you remains. Maybe not. Just looking at the detail of it, getting closer and closer to what is actually experiencing, what is actually being experienced here. So when you're moving and you're taking some stuff with you, not other stuff,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth looking at what emotional baggage are you taking with you. Not trying to define it as such, but just looking. And that heaviness, that reluctance, that difficulty is almost certainly going to be in the emotional baggage, not in the actual physical things that you're going to take or not take.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it means, or what you think it means, where the heaviness is. Is part of you say you're a failure?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. And yet that's just exactly like what we were just talking about. That part of you ignores actual facts about conditions. What if the reason for this divorce is that you were incompatible to start with, that you got together with your wife because of this loneliness, not because of any other compatibility factor, because you were just trying to fix this loneliness. And that the inevitable outcome of that is that as you've evolved, it's happened like that. That's a possibility. I don't know. It's just a story that came up here. And so if you get together with somebody in the future to fix your loneliness, another divorce is inevitable.
I mean, that would still make me feel like a failure due to kind of an error in judgment. You know?
Yeah. Well, there's another aspect to failure that's really important here, and that is that there's something inherently wrong with you or what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. This is just life playing out the way life plays out.
Yeah.
But if you believe that you're a failure, then again, that's something well worth looking into. And you'll find that there is the feeling of being a failure, and then there's the intellectual perspective on it that is much more aligned with being an adult. And you find that the feeling of being a failure also isn't a contemporary thing. It comes from the first time you felt you were a failure and the consequence of that and following, right? So as we've mentioned before, as a child of an Asian mother with high demands on you, you were always going to be a failure. You never could live up to what she demanded of you. You know, because she demanded that you study for 18 hours a day and achieved great things. She wanted you to be a doctor until you became a doctor, and then she said you should have been a musician, so you could never satisfy her.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So you were inevitably going to be a failure, no matter what you did.
Yeah.
But it's time to transcend that because of this opportunity, this amazing opportunity that's turned up, as painful as it is.
Vince, Ray, I just wanted to add something because I think Vince really there in the last minute or two hit on a really important point. That feeling failure, to me, that feels like that's the lid on top of stuff that we run from all our lives. And the opportunity now is to really feel that what you're calling I've failed or I'm a failure. And it's in the feeling of all that and whatever comes up beneath without labeling it. That's your doorway through this.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, in truth, it's just a feeling. The label I'm a failure is what keeps you from feeling it. But when you get into it and feel it, see where it takes you. It's not going to kill you. I remember the old mystic from America, I can't think of her name, but her saying was, what's in the way is the way. So this is your opportunity to put it another way, to fail fully, but it's not what you think it is.
That's very awake of you, Dennis. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Ray, about loneliness. It
Mhm.
kind of hits a chord for me. I've had that feeling forever. And I've been married twice and divorced twice. And I can tell you that it's never changed until recently. It was always there. And my question is, when you were married, were you lonely?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, lately, much more so. Um, yeah, there's always a little bit of loneliness and the feeling of separateness and not being understood.
Because underneath the loneliness is something else. Something you can sit with. I always thought I was lonely because I wasn't getting what I needed from someone else. but I discovered something else. And you won't be more lonely when you transition on your own. It will feel different. But it's not because you're alone. And you'll find ways to distract yourself as you have all along. And you'll still get up and do what you have to do, as you've done all along. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important, Ray, at this point to not think, okay, I've got to go and do things. I've got to do this. I've got to think this. I've got to remember this. Okay. Just relax. It will happen or not. And if it doesn't, we'll poke it again. But yeah, be relaxed about it. That's the important one. Nothing to fix. And what we're really approaching here is a recognition that there's nothing to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Problems are always perceived problems, never actual problems. What's your thoughts about all of this, Alexey? Is this what you expected?
I didn't really have any expectations, honestly. So it was interesting while Ray was talking. I had like a match on one like a dating website. So he was talking about loneliness and I was like, oh my gosh. And then Monique started talking about the inability to fill that loneliness with relationships. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do. So I just kind of based it in that for a little while. And I just remembered, I was like, oh, I still felt lonely when I was somebody, and it just wasn't enough. And it's just like a sense of running. Um, so I just kind of sat with that while he was talking. I was like, I just, uh, it just the relatability is just, it's quite magical for me that everyone's experiencing these things. So today I had one other Zoom on Awakening. I've never talked to people like about this stuff. I always just kept it to myself. So it's quite, it's definitely not what I imagined, but I didn't have any expectation about what it should be like. And um, it just kind of made me realize all the things that I am definitely avoiding and I haven't looked at. So just as people were talking, I just kind of wanted to just fixate the things that are going on with me and my emotions. That's why I've just been kind of listening. I've been getting a lot out of it.
Right. Hmm. How about you, Michelle? Is this hitting anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, every time people speak authentically and look deeply is like magic for me. Like that's been something that at least this character has always felt was wrong with the world.
Yeah. And we all yearn for it, don't we? It just there. Authenticity, spontaneity is just something the world is missing these days. Maybe always, I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like it's not about sugarcoating anything or like entertaining thoughts, but recognizing thoughts are there. Like just going into it, like what's happening, what
Mm.
and being in community doing that, I just think is a, like a magical experience.
So, Dennis, last meeting you got a bit of a hammering. Have you had any realizations since then?
Yeah, I realized I was a nail. No, um, felt good after it was yesterday for me, a day ago. Um, felt good. A few different periods where I had a lot of emotion, crying, um, watching telly, watching movies, just feeling a little bit more freer, um, more release in my chest, and I noticed last night then a lot of sort of kicking and shaking and vibrating in the body, kind of a bit of energy moving. Um, and again today, energy, a lot of shaking in the arms and the hands, and just it was really interesting. Like it was like I'm fine, but the body's starting to shake and energy in the body, and it's interesting to see where that'll go.
Did that feel like release?
Yeah, yeah, like I could call it Kundalini, or I've done it in the past. I've done a bit of TRE. I was saying to my wife, God, if I lay down and did TRE now, I'd probably lift off the ground. I didn't need to do it; it was doing it itself. Um, so yeah, it's something just lightening the load on the body.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing what the body hangs on to, holds on, always with contraction. Mm.
Yeah, and like it's hard to pinpoint what's causing it to release, but it's just it's releasing a little bit, and in a way, it just feels lovely, like have your attention or your awareness in the body, in the feeling, in the tingling, the vibration, the heat. It's like a drug. You just could lie there and melt into it
Mm.
forever. And it's funny, I remember like thinking back years, like resisting it or it being uncomfortable or all the labels that come with it. And without the labels, it's just like slipping into a hot bath.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. It shows you how much we used to use the mind to escape that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'd only, I think what helped too, I'd only gone back to the gym 3 days ago after not being there for, I might as well say a year. And when I was doing exercise, I was like, oh, from my stomach to my toes, that part of my body felt like it was 20, light, loose, flexible, strong. But from my chest upwards, felt contracted, tight, and old. It was a real contrast, and half the body was one way and the other half was the other. And when I fatigued the muscles gently, light weights, whatever that did, it just allowed for a lot of shaking to start to come up with obviously this work as well. So that was interesting. So at the moment, it's just being in the body, feeling into the body, and I think that's probably more possible now because the mind isn't as active.
Great. Yeah. Excellent. Good stuff. You can see how how that, just a story, of course, but that the initial contraction of holding on in the beginning takes effort, but after a while it freezes there, and it's like it takes no effort. It's just locked in. There's a kind of an immobility in it, and what you're doing is fracturing that frozenness that allows things to start happening. Yeah. Well, that was a good story, wasn't it? Did you like it?
I love you guys so, so much.
Oh, I also want to thank Monique for her description of thoughts. It's really helpful for me to have like a visual that I can then relate to. And so I can see that and being able to use that as a tool.
Excellent. Yeah. Love the way you guys help each other. It's just beautiful.
I really appreciate the sharing and listening to one another. It's a wonderful experience. It's something new for me.
And I just wanted to say, kind of wanting to Ray, it was on my mind that from where I sit, even though you're looking at that failure and what's underneath it, to me, you're absolutely not a failure. In a month's time, you'll still have a relationship with your children. You'll still have a relationship with the woman you married. Everything will still be in one way the same. And it's a huge opportunity for you to see what else life has to bring for you. But you won't know that now. You'll know it in a short time.
Thanks, Dennis. And thank you everybody for listening and contributing. Thank you.
And you're not alone, Ray. I feel a really strong connection with you.
Excellent.
Oriana, I don't need to ask how you're going. I just presume that you're floating along rather well. Is that so?
So I only have one perspective and nothing to compare it to. So here I am, just being where I'm at. I did want to say that when you mentioned for Ray, that sense of sweetness and grief, the grief of sense of life. And I like the definition between sadness and grief. Grief being the story behind or under sadness. But after my son died, that I would deliberately put on Pink Floyd music really loud in the car to bring up all that emotion. And it was definitely sweet. There was a sweetness that embraced the whole experience. Yeah, so I would literally, deliberately put myself in that place to experience it and then process it. For me, it was sweet.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I discovered that only about 2 months after I woke up when a really good friend of mine died. And after 2 years of breast cancer, she died, my sister-in-law. And I experienced that beautiful sweetness about that. There was no grief at all. There was no, not for a moment was there a story about how it should not have happened. It was just, you know, but the sweetness of that sadness was, it still is so close to the surface. And this is what, 16 years later. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I get a little teary just the topic sort of brings that up. And I definitely was not fully free of any sense of story and regret that, the whole thing should have been different. And I know that's not true. However, there were things I wish I'd done differently that might have ended up in a different result. But it didn't. And there you have it. I can't change it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I have been accessing these studies, these practices, and connecting with other people that have I think, a broader, more inclusive perspective of whatever life in general and the way the world rolls out. Because for a while after my son's death, I participated in a national volunteer organization of parents whose children have died called Compassionate Friends. And I came to realize so many of those people they were really at a dead end for them. There was a hitting a wall. There was no moving forward from that grief and that shock. And I had to stop going to the meetings because I would come away more bummed out than but I did end up volunteering for the last, let's see, 12 years. I volunteer to write the letters to the parents on the child's birthday. So I have a whole documentation of about probably 500 letters that I write a year to the parents in the immediate Bay Area. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, who belong to that chapter and whose children have died. And I have had so much opportunity. Every day I have to write letters, and it gives me an opportunity to remind myself of the gifts that I have had as a result of having this experience with having such a magnificent person being in my life for as long as he was there. And also to put forth a possible positive spin to the parents, not a negative, oh, ain't it awful letter, So anyway, it's been and I've got a whole box of letters, huge box of letters from parents who've written me back to thank me for what I've said and to remembering their child. So there's good things have come out of it, likely.
Yeah. I imagine your heart's tripled in size as a result of all of this.
Yeah, yeah. I can be on all sides. It seems like I can see from all directions, perspectives. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. It seems paradoxical to say that in the greatest pain there is immense beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I do feel sad for those parents. I know that years later they believe and act as though it happened yesterday, and they can't move forward. They can't. They're on the verge of suicide because of it. They're just so overwhelmed with the experience, and they can't seem to move out of it. And that's really difficult.
Mm. So this brings me to something that's fundamental for all of us, I think, and that is how do we view all the shit that's going on in the world? You know, all the bad stuff that seems to be there. You know, that is a absolutely immense thing to. Can we discover? I have somewhat partially a way of looking at it that I won't say makes it okay, but well, I'll run out of words. You know what I mean? How do we look at all that stuff? How do you look at that immense sadness for those people that are on the verge of suicide? Or how do you look at your new government? That's a classic example of this stuff. How do we approach that?
What, that reminds me of how I have actually said to certain people, I don't say this to everybody, I don't want to discount their what they're experiencing, but because of their possible fear of what happens after their child dies, what's happening to them, did they go to hell or something, some of these beliefs, some of these horrible ideas that I just am, and they ask me, how do you manage? And I just simply say, I don't know what happens. Um, and there are so many possibilities. We can imagine all kinds of things. I said, just make up something that works for you. Just make it up. It makes you feel a whole lot better because you don't really know.
Mm.
It's all made up until we're experiencing it. So for it right now, just make up your favorite fantasy about what happens.
Okay, well,
So that's what we can do about our country.
Yeah.
First of all, I try to limit the amount of exposure to the news because it can be really daunting. But also, it's just like, okay, I'll just make up something really great that's going to come out of it. Just.
Yeah, good one. Yeah. Yeah. I made up a good story. I've got a great story about that, and that is that, you go to somewhere or other to eat food and you go home and the next thing you find that you're vomiting and you've got diarrhea. Okay, that's the body trying to get rid of the toxins because of the food poisoning, right? So it's what you would call a healing crisis that your body is going through. And all this shit that's going on in the world, from a bigger perspective, way back here, it's a healing crisis. I mean, I might not be alive to see health as a result of that, but it is an attempt to get rid of the toxins in the world. This whole thing is all the wars, all of the 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 bummer that's going on is all just a healing crisis. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get back to having a healthy world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good story. I don't know how true it is, but it's a good way to look at
I like it. Very well.
it. Can you talk while you drive, Phoebe? Oh, I don't want to distract you.
Okay, now I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. So it's so, oh my God, it's so great to see you all. I really have missed you, but I am on fire about getting into oil painting, and I just have a huge learning curve right now. Listening to podcasts and about artists around the world and learning who's still out there and who the masters are. And um, my Dennis, Dennis, my painting is just so rudimentary. It's like kindergarten 101. It's, oh God, but it's sweet. It's also sweet. What, and these first initial efforts I'm making for the first time in 50 years um, are humbling, but I don't care. I just am all in. I am all in on the oil painting. So I became a member of the Portrait Society of America 3 days ago, and I signed up for their conference, which will take place this May in near Washington, D.C. And I have 34 years of drawing portraits. Although my portrait work next to these artists is very stiff and there's so many ways it's not where I want it to be, but it it feels it just feels so wonderful just thinking I don't really care. I don't care. I don't care if I am just the beginning artist at this conference. I don't care. I'm so excited to be around these people um and it's just taking up all my time.
Great, great. Isn't it
Yeah,
amazing how learning is discovery, and that is so exciting. That is expanding us. We're getting bigger as it's the process of learning,
yeah,
the discovery of that is just brilliant. Love it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I in listening to these podcasts, different artists, one of them recommended a book called "There's No Plan B for Your A Game," and I listened to it on Audible, And it just totally charged me up. I was like so excited. So I recommended this book to several people. And my sister got back to me today and she's like, yeah, I hated it. I was like, really? She said, yeah, it reminded me of our brother Richard. The guy's so dogmatic. And I said, oh, yeah. I get it. Yeah, because you're either a winner, you're a player, or you're a loser, you're a fan. There's no, but I said to my sister, I have about 5 things that have equal balance in my life. One is my health, which includes eating really well and preparing organic food. And that's as high a priority as me becoming a world-renowned artist. Another is my mother, 99 and a half. She's a commitment. She's not going to be here forever. She's important. And then the painting, the artwork, and then my relationship with my partner, and then my relationship with my children and my siblings, and you tribe. These people that are core to really my joy. All these people, your community is a source of joy for me. I love it. And comfort and wisdom and all those things. But finding the balance between me taking care of myself, me honoring the relationships that are closest to me, and then the commitment to my art, which I have never put my art above responsibility to other people. So now I'm doing that, and a lot of people are not in my life anymore. There are very few people in my life anymore because I'm not going to sacrifice my art for their comfort or their whatever. They got to figure out whatever they need to figure out. And this book has really helped me. Every time I go to complain about, oh my God, these paintings look awful, I say to myself, sweetheart, how many hours have you put into drawing and painting this week? How many hours have you put into this painting? So there's no complaining about how your work looks till you put in the hours. And what's just really wonderful about it is this desire is coming from inside me. It's not something that I'm imposing about. It's not coming from thought at all. It's really coming from my core, this desire and drive to create and to learn and to master. So I'm just, I think I'm just still in a real high, and I'm like, let's ride this wave. But I did things like last week. I woke up one morning. I've been awake since 3 or 2 in the morning or something, and finally I got out of bed at 4:30 or 5, and started going through my dresser, and I ended up with 10 white trash bags, kitchen trash bags, full of clothes, shoes, stuff. I dropped off at this local place that gives it to needy families. It's not Salvation Army. It's a private group that makes sure that people who are in need get what they need. And it's just like clean out, let it go. And I'm giving all my acrylic paints to my stepsister because she paints in acrylic, and I just love oil. I'll never go back. And I bought the best paintbrushes in the world, made in the UK by Rosemary and Co. company, and I'm like rented the hotel in Washington D.C. for 5 nights, 6 nights. You know, it's $1,000, and it's like done. I just it's not like I really have this money to do this, but I'm like, I'll make it happen. I'm just gonna do this. So, um, yeah. So I feel so lucky to be me.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Yeah.
And I I was with my mom today, and my youngest sister showed up, and the two of us were there. And at one point, my mom turned to me and she said, "Does Jeff still love me?" And Jeff is my ex. And I said, "I don't know. Let's check it out." So I text him. I said, "I'm visiting with mom. She wants to know if you still love her." And he wrote back and he said, "Forever." And it just made her, she was so happy, and it was sweet. It was just sweet. Yeah. Yeah. So life is good.
Great. Yeah.
My daughter's in London, and her visa ran out and is done out in February. I have no idea if she got another visa. I have no idea if she's moving home. I was thinking about it the other night as I was falling asleep, and I thought, well, if she has to move home, I guess I'll move in with John and she can live at my place. And that's that. And it's no angst about controlling the situation or anything. It's like, well, she's going to work out however it works out. And this whole thing about Trump, Donald Trump, one of the things about this book, there's no plan B for your A game. One of the things he stresses is the need for competition in order to grow. In order to grow and become the best we can become, we need competition. And Donald Trump is a form of competition. We are going to have to get smarter, stronger. We're going to have to really hone ourselves to really deal with a madman. I mean, basically, I think he's a madman. I think he's actually literally out of his mind. But the majority of Americans don't feel that way. They think that he is the Messiah. And
yep. So hopefully he'll be bad enough that they'll realize that too.
Right. And that's the possibility here. But it's also for people who are complacent. You know, you can't be complacent in this environment. I don't think you can be complacent. So anyway, yeah.
That's an interesting one. Complacency. I don't know. Yeah, I have to think about that. Think about it. I'll have to employ the mind to investigate complacency.
Yeah.
So I ask myself, am I complacent? I don't know.
Yeah. Vince, I know I'm complacent. I'm like the queen of complacency. That's my comfort zone. And yeah, doesn't help.
How can you be complacent and be so excited about life? They don't go together, do they?
Well, the complacency is everyone play nice. that's my complacency. Play nice, that people pleasing, everyone get along. Let's take care of people who need taken care of, and let's like I'm like a huge caretaker. That is my role in life. I'm a caretaker, and and I want people in authority figures, to help take care of me and the world. And where I am now is, yeah, I don't have time for that. I have 20 good years to create. I figure until I'm in my early 90s, I can do really good work between now and 90. And that's my focus. And my health, people closest to me that I love. But the rest of the world's got to take care of themselves. They got to step up. They've got to.
Yep.
You know, and I can't look at the screen to know how to pronounce the name of the woman who lost her son.
Oriana.
Oriana, what you said is just so beautiful and so powerful. And your compassion and your heart for these families who are still in deep grief. And I know someone who lost their son on the Lockerbie flight. When was that? 30, 40 years ago. And they're still bitter. They're still holding on to that. And you're being able to hold both of those at the same time is really beautiful. And for me, very inspiring, that you can hold your grief, and that that sweet sadness and tenderness and love for your son. And you can still choose joy and life and hold those families in tenderness and love. And that it's just beautiful. Yeah, really beautiful. So life is good. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. It's good to know that you're in a great place.
Yeah, it feels great. I got to tell you. Yeah, and I look at my little paintings, and I'm like, you go, girl. You go with your kindergarten 101. It's okay, because you'll get there. Your
Yeah.
10th painting will look better than this first painting. So.
And the earlier it is, the greater the discovery.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So, and I've been off all forms of sugar, all grains, all carbohydrates for the last month. So January, I stopped all sugar. So I just eat clean protein and vegetables. Very little fruit, lemons and grapefruit. And I'm flushing out my liver right now. Apparently, fatty liver disease is the fastest growing disease in the entire world. And so I'm working with this guy I found on YouTube, who I think is fantastic. And I'm accepting responsibility and taking control of my health. And it feels fantastic.
Oh, that's inspirational.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, and all of it is coming from this internal, like from my belly, this desire, this drive is coming from inside my belly. None of it's imposed from my mind.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, yeah. An expression of creativity.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a desire, like the desire for health is so weird. I can't I hear you and you guys talk about words again. Now we're getting, how do I express this? I can't express it. It's not a thought. It's a body decision. My body is making these decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's super cool. But sleep, 4 hours sleep, then I wake up and then I lie in bed for 4 hours, and once or twice a week I sleep 8 hours. So my sleep schedule's gone off again. But then I just think, God, I'm so excited. It's just hard to chill. Yeah. I need a cat. I've been watching, a lot of artists have cats, and I'm watching these people with cats on their laps, and it's like, damn, I think I need a cat. I think I need something. Oh, man.
Cats certainly have something to teach us, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Phoebe. That's really good. Yeah, I love it. You always get me excited, you do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I'm listening to these artists, and I mean, just knocks my socks off. But one of them said something that was really neat. He was talking about what makes like that the artists that I want to be in community with. These artists are so good that only these artists can tell which artists are really better. Because lay people, unless you're an artist and you have an eye, you don't get the nuance. You can't. People can go into galleries and they buy these paintings, but a lot of the people who buy them can't tell the difference between the paintings. And there's a difference. And to have an eye and to be able to tell the differences, there's like a responsibility to create to that level. Like I have a calling to create to that level. And it's exciting. It's just freaking exciting. And I may never do it. I may never do it. I may get to be 90 and say, girl, you should have started when you were 30. It was, but it doesn't matter. I get to do what I get to do for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
I really like
all
that
good.
you. I like that you are not focused on impressing somebody else. That you're doing this.
Oh no.
For what comes out
No.
of you. Yes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
there is no impressing anyone else. And this is what these artists talk about, is how it's game on with yourself.
Yes.
I mean, it's you are your only competition, and there are people all around you that can inspire you because it's just like our group right here. each of us inspires each other.
Mm.
I mean, I listen to all of you talk, and all of you feed my soul. All of you help me with aha moments. Same thing with the art world.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I want to be in that group. I want to be in that group. And I also don't care. I mean, one of the things, you know, these artists are freaking unbelievable, some of them. I mean, they're really on a level with John Singer Sargent. I mean, they're that good. That is the bar for excellence, is John Singer Sargent. And some of them are as good as Sargent. And yeah, I want to play ball there. I want to play ball with them. And I don't care that my work's hokey or tight, or I don't care. I'll get better. I'll keep exposing myself to good art and I will get better. Yeah. So it's just wonderful.
Yeah. You're inspiring on many levels for me. Mm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I've just hidden my whole life. I mean, I don't have Instagram. I haven't updated my website since 2016. I have just been hiding. And I have 3 months to update my website. So when I go to Washington, D.C., I have business cards. I have an Instagram. I have an updated website. I can market myself. I can sell myself. And I can unapologetically say, this is who I am. And this is what I've done.
So will you still do your pencil drawings, or was that finished?
No, I will, because there's still a calling for that. And when I called the Portrait Society of America, I was like, I'd like to be a member, but do I have to show a portfolio? And she said, no, you don't. I said, well, it's so funny, Vince. I'm so apologetic about my work, but to get $30,000 for a portrait, that's not chump change.
No, that says something.
It is something to be able to get a price like that. And I did it. And I hope to do it again. And so, but it all has to do with coming out of hiding.
Yes.
It all has to do with me standing up and saying, this is who I am, and this is my body of work. And yeah, I understand it's really tight. I get it.
Yeah.
I understand that it's really illustration. I get it. But this is where I've been, and this is what I've done. And I'm really proud of it. I mean, some of my work is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And some of it is, not as good as it could be, but it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Where I was at that time. So yeah.
So do you get that this coming out of hiding is also coming out of hiding from yourself?
Yes, I do get that. Yeah. And it's happening in every aspect of my life. Like my relationship with my partner
Yes.
has changed 180 degrees. And one of my sisters called me while we were in the store the other day, and I had to say something to John while I was talking with her, and I just made a quiet comment to him, and she said, "Oh my God, I love your voice. I've never heard you talk like that. Your voice often sounds like it's on edge, but that was beautiful. Is that how you talk to John?" And it's so this, I don't know, it's just shifts are happening, just and happening in every aspect,
Yeah, beautiful.
every relationship. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, you can't do this stuff without it flowing into all corners. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And this taking care of myself, this really fixing my body. I was living on sugar for probably 3 years, sugar and carbs. So, that wreaks havoc with your body. So cleaning up my food and cleaning up my body. Now my right hand is still very stiff. I've got a lot of arthritis in my right hand. But this, still hear me?
Yes.
Um, but the diet, cleaning up the diet should clear out the arthritis. So that's there. So there you go.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
very inspirational.
um, well, man, I'm just about getting to going to fill up with gas before I get home. So I'm going to get off at the next exit. Um, so let's get off our call. Someone else can talk
Okay,
so
thank
I
you,
don't have
Phoebe.
to interrupt this. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah. So how's this impacted on you, Andre?
You mean Trump or what Phoebe said or
Well, just
nighttime?
everything that you've been listening to. Has anything impacted?
Um, yeah, it just makes me feel bad, I guess. Um, and it's hard for me. And when Phoebe was saying like she's missed people and what she's getting from people, and I was like, why am I not having that? Why am I not feeling the same way? Why am I not being friendly and nice and why am I so bitter? Yeah. And so I think I just I kind of felt envious, but not in a bad way, I guess. It's just envious. Um and I also thought uh I also thought that what Phoebe shared was nice, right? And when what people were sharing before Phoebe was also nice, and it had some value, and it had um, some meaning and mostly value to other people, and somehow I'm not able to identify any of that value in my um, thoughts or words or events or whatever I have to share. So. Um, So I don't know. I just I feel my usual grumpiness and bitterness and um, and unhappiness, I guess, but not as strong as usual, but still there. Yeah, I said it.
Hmm. So are you a failure?
Pretty much, yeah. And I have because I think because partly because of the child, I have been going through the stuff that's coming up for me does have a sort of childish flavor, and um, so these are all the things that I am experiencing are seem like very old and very young sort of strategies or coping mechanisms or
Mm.
defense strategies, and and I just I'm not I haven't quite figured out what to do with them other than just sort of notice them and live um and live them. I was driving the car the other day and the guy the pickup guy um honked at me and he and I looked up at him and he flipped me off and he said something clearly by his facial expression. He said something rude to me. Um, and I looked at him, and my first response was I was scared. I was scared, and then the second reaction that followed up was that I you know, like babies when you spook them they start crying. So that what came up in me. I was like, and I could almost see my sort of mimics, change in a way that, but the feeling inside was like, why are you so fucking rude to me? But there was no fucking, of course. It was just, why, like it was so, like I wasn't ready for it. It was so rude. It was so coarse. It was like almost a very kind of childish response, and I sort of enjoyed it because it felt unusual, not something you certainly um, demonstrate as an adult to other men. Um, but I just realized that between that child and and uh, and the world, often there is not an adult. There's no adult or there's no parent to translate or to defend the child or to explain what's happening, or so the baby or the child is just is left there on its own and has to face the whatever's happening in the world and use little um of the the strategies or the tools that the child has um well, not to protect, but I mean I don't know how kids respond to unexpected uh um, rude things that happen to them in the world. They would probably, I don't know, they would just maybe get scared and cry. They don't have much choice really. So and I guess when I talk about the way that I am responding to what people are saying is that I am mostly responding from either a child or a teenager who is having their needs not met, and because of that other people are not, well, it's not, I'm not so much interested in other people as I am interested in those needs that haven't been met. And this stuff is not, I don't think I am aware of those most of the time. I'm only aware of the reactions that I have. Like yeah, I hope it makes any sense at all, but that's
Yeah, for those who don't know, Andre's got a new baby, probably what, 4 weeks old at the moment.
5. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really stimulating a lot of stuff for him. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You have 5?
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a big achievement. Yeah.
it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say, Andre, would you say you have a core belief that you need to protect yourself?
It yeah, the stuff I have been noticing it is like I'm not, especially I notice that I'm afraid of, I'm scared of this group now, and I'm scared of the world, and so there's a lot of fear in me now, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and like you guys are, I should be cautious, you guys are dangerous, and whatever you say is dangerous, but it's not like an adult kind of type dangerous. It's more like sort of child type dangerous. So yeah, I have to, well, I have to defend myself, protect myself by not being vulnerable, by interacting in a very kind of dry and invulnerable way, and protected way, I guess. So I just need a big condom, all over me to protect me from the germs of the world.
Yeah, look, guys, I'm just going to have to duck out for a minute. You just carry on, please.
Hey.
The reason I mentioned it, Andre, was because it was like, in one way, you talked about the guy who flipped you off and was angry, and life allowed him to do that, but you think life won't allow you to respond, that you need to be in control. And the reality is, life will just respond to life. And if you can trust that, you might have a different experience. But your idea that I need to do something, I need to respond, like the response will happen, and there's no wrong response, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, but like there's an idea of being adequate or inadequate, and then and a part of me thinks that whatever reactions I'm having, um, as long as I'm aware of them, then it's okay. And so if I respond to aggression with tears, that's okay. But also, it is not okay because um, there's an idea that it is not, that as an adult, I should be able to see that reaction and integrate that reaction, but also um, locate the adult inside of me, and then and talk to that adult, right, and or parent, so that the parent can actually um, make that reaction mature, uh, so that I respond accordingly to my sex or my age or whatever. On one hand, on the other hand, I'm quite happy to have these spontaneous reactions. I actually love them, but I don't have a it's hard for me to find a safe environment to to practice them, to give them space, to let them happen, and not choke them, or have ideas about them, and just just see them, I guess.
And do you think you're an adult?
Well, I think I am a teenager who's trying to be an adult. Well, he's pretending to be an adult, but there's a little bit of adult in me somewhere. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes not.
It just feels like maybe if you are able to see your idea of being an adult as just an idea, something you're trying to uphold, and if you can see that that's not realistic and let it drop, and there might be an opportunity for adulthood to operate a little bit more freely.
I think I am. I have too many ideas about what I should and shouldn't be, and the intention behind those ideas is kind of positive, because I'm trying to become a sort of a better and more and freer version of myself. But I also sometimes wish I could just not lose my mind, but I think it has to do with, like, find that environment where I can sort of relive what I wasn't able to live. Like, when I think the fantasy here is when I was a child and and something emerged in me, and I wanted to live it. Someone came over and said, "Nah, don't. This is like, we don't like this. Take it away, remove it." And then a few times later, I'm like, okay, so I kind of turn it off, that part of me, and there, and I think there are a few of them that I have ignored in my life, because because I think it was part of the strategy of getting love from someone important, and sense of safety, I suppose. But now I want to go back and open the genie, rub that lamp and just let it emerge in a way that it wishes or it desires. Because I'm looking at my newborn, and that's just the way he is. So natural, so unconditioned yet. And I just, and there, of course I have ideas, but those ideas have nothing to do with him being alive and life sort of manifesting through him. And I wish that I could have this kind of freedom, or insanity in a way. Insanity as a way of um, insanity as the characteristics of the environment that would allow me to relive those parts, spontaneous parts, and I don't really know what they are, and I don't want to know what they are. I just want them to know that it is safe to come out, and let them come out, whenever they want to, and sort of, and re-own them, I guess. That's the dream that it almost sounds like a dream when I describe it, but it's a dream that I have.
Do you recognize the value of you seeing that that's a possibility?
Very little, because there's a very strong criticism going on inside myself of that, and it just says it's I don't really I don't I doubt that this can happen. I doubt that I I don't. I see a value. I see value in it, but not much, to be honest.
Mm.
It's almost like I'm describing a, a a dream which is unachievable and unfulfillable, but it's still nice to. Uh, I don't know. Maybe it's just another way to suffer. Is to call it unachievable.
Mm. Can you see that achievable or unachievable is just a story?
Uh, I can, but I am so and I'm identified with it so strongly that um, for me it seems like it's almost seems like concrete at the moment, like it's made of cement and
Okay, so that's also a story, but with feelings attached to it. That one, yeah.
I know it's a story. I know, but I believe this story so much.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So what we're really talking about, I mean, what you say is really good. It's really what you say you want, what you recognise is there is really good. The idea about possibility is just rubbish. You know? But there is that recognition that there is something in you that wants to come out, so to speak. That's real.
Yeah.
That's actual, isn't it?
Yes.
It's an
Indeed.
impulse there. Yeah. And then along comes all these stories that say, ah, yeah, blah, 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 you know, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good. That's a gist. Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Mm.
But all those stories, and you told a really long story there, Andre. Like that story is just designed so you don't stop and be right here and right now. Because right here and right now, what's going on?
Hmm.
You're a new dad now. It's very
Well,
important you get this right.
here right now, I'm excruciatingly tired. I have really dark thoughts about my babies every now and then, which makes me which and because of those thoughts, I feel like I'm a really shitty dad. Sometimes uh, I feel very happy and very elevated and and uh, and I feel that connection with him. Um,
And just to say one thing about that, really shitty dads, don't worry about the fact that they're really shitty dads. So we can just put that one down for a minute. But again, without the stories, what's here, right now?
well, Dennis, there's a. I just feel like um, I'm sitting on a boiling pan or kettle of emotions or feelings, and and it's all seasoned with um, tiredness. So I'm just like
So you're feeling emotional
I'm very emotional. Yeah, I am, and I'm suppressing that because da, 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 because it's there's
because why are you suppressing them?
Because I am not the one who is eligible. Well, I'm not the one who can, who, whose turn it is to be emotional now. It's the baby. It's the baby's turn. The baby has the right to be emotional. I have to be. Um, I have to contain it. I have to contain my emotions. I have to contain baby's emotions, and I
And do you
have to
believe that?
pull myself. No, actually, I don't.
Because
But
is that what you would tell your baby? Suppress, don't feel. Is that the way we should do it when we feel emotional? So in order for your child to be parented well, are you courageous enough to feel your own emotions?
there are certain emotions that I am scared of, and um, I so I'm still not showing him all of it. Um, I will probably there'll be some lies in it as anyway. Um, because I feel really fed up, like it's over the top, and I put him down and I just go out and I go to another room or something, and or tell my wife that,
So what's the emotion that you're most afraid of feeling?
that I hate him, that I wish he wasn't there. Well, but it's not an emotion. It's I hate him. But
So
that's the extreme.
that's a story that's covering up an emotion. So if we just leave the story alone for a minute, what's under the story? What emotion is under the story?
It's just feeling overwhelmed. It's just like, this is too fucking much. That's it. And then it
Yeah,
turns into,
yeah. Being a parent, having a newborn, and everything that brings, the uncertainty is absolutely overwhelming for everyone who ever had a child. So that's nothing new. You're not something different or special or worse because of it. That's normal and natural to feel overwhelmed. So you don't need to suppress it. What you can do is speak to your partner and say, Jesus, I'm overwhelmed with this. And she'll go, Jesus, so am I. It's not as bad as I thought.
Here's an interesting one, Andre. Would you tell your baby, don't feel what you're feeling? Would you tell your baby it's okay to feel scared or it's okay to feel overwhelmed? If your baby was able to express
yeah.
thing, I mean, you don't know what it's expressing in it really, but if it were able to express that, would you say to it, baby, it's okay?
Yeah, I guess I would.
Yeah, but not to yourself. It's not okay for you, but it's okay for the baby.
Yeah. It's okay for the baby because he's a baby, and it's not okay for me because I'm a dad and
Yeah.
whatever comes with being a dad.
Okay, but here you go. You are still a baby. Those things that you feel are your baby things. And it was because you were never told that it's okay to feel those things. But you're going to be a better parent than your parents were because you're going to tell your baby it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
It's
a,
nice to
it's
hear.
just a little bit. It's just a little bit of conditioning, Andre. You're not seeing the choice you have. You have the choice to be your dad,
Yeah.
or you have the choice to discover what kind of a dad you're going to be.
Oh, that's heavy.
And right now, you're choosing your dad because that's all you know, and you've no way of knowing what kind of a dad you're going to be because life is just presenting it now, and it's overwhelming. It's scary. Because I remember when my first was born. It was completely overwhelming and I burst into tears. It was a totally unique experience. Um, so you'll have all these ideas about what it means to be a dad, but now you're going to discover, and it takes courage to be vulnerable, to be open, to be afraid, to be to come on here and talk about it, which will be a huge benefit to you. You're doing the right things. You just need to see that. it's okay.
Yeah, it's a relief, I guess. A bit of a relief to hear that, because there are ideas that I have to be strong, and strong means that um,
Means dead.
means dead. Yeah, it means numb.
Mm. Mm. Andre, have you discovered the ability to catnap for 7 minutes?
Not yet. No, I no. We what we did, we split the night into two parts, where my wife does first half, and then I do the second half of the night. Then I feed the baby and with the bottle, and but because the baby, he wakes up, well, like babies have a very sort of uh not restless, what's the word, like like they make noises, and they move a lot while they sleep. And to me, it seems like they're waking up. And when they're waking up, I'm like, oh fuck, he's going to wake up now. And then it's this anxiety. So every time he does that, I put my hand on him, and then he's silent. But that happens, like, I don't really know how often, but that happens. It seems like it's happening like every minute. So I it seems like I'm getting 2 hours of sleep or 3 hours of sleep, but in fact I wake up so often to his noises that then in the morning I'm completely destroyed, and I don't feel relaxed. So maybe if there's a way to sleep for 7 minutes and feel fully relaxed, yeah, I guess I'd love that.
Yeah. So not only are you only getting half a night's sleep, but that sleep you're getting is very light. You're keeping yourself in a very shallow sleep in order to be able to listen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I
yeah.
do remember a relief that came the first time my kids slept for the whole night. That was a really big thing. Yeah, yeah.
And that'll come soon. It won't be like this forever. They will eventually sleep longer and longer, and you'll get your sleep back and you'll survive it. No problem. Just watch the thoughts. He's your best teacher now for the next 6 months.
Oh,
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
all your life, I think he'll be the best teacher. Yeah, he'll be a good teacher anyway. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, guys. Thank you. I mean, this is a great support, and it also is a great reminder that I shouldn't numb parts of me because of this experience.
Absolutely. They're
Or
they're legitimate. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And did you discover that you don't need to be afraid of this group?
No, not really. No, because I'm because I when I joined it first and I saw Paul, and then I thought to myself, okay, uh, I have to. It has to, whatever I say has to be about, related to awakening or non-duality. It has to be deep. It has to be smart. It has to have a value. Blah blah blah. And I have none of that. That's so I am. I guess I used to love being spontaneous in this group. At some point, I decided that it is not encouraged, and based on that fantasy or decision, I am now I now no longer safe. I now no longer feel safe to be spontaneous and just be myself, and fool around. And
Okay.
I have to be. But that's, I don't know. That's the way it is now. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same way
Yeah, yeah.
next time I join.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's definitely you don't have to be. You can be spontaneous.
Yeah, if you come as a wall, we'll break out the sledgehammers. But if you come as a nice hot bubble bath, we'll jump right in.
Well put. I like that. Yeah.
So next time, before I start talking, I should probably go around and ask people, what do you want me to talk about, and what sort of things would make you feel good, and what things would make you feel bad, and I'll just omit the ones that are. I'll ask Paul, I guess. Paul, is that okay if I fool around and ignore non-duality for a moment? No, you. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm. So it's your job to make us all happy, is it?
Still, yeah. Like Phoebe said, I take care of you, but not because I love you, because I'm scared shitless of you, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I also love you, but that is hard to see right now.
Mm. Yeah. I'm glad you're
But
here.
anyway,
Mm.
yeah, I think I had enough courage because Phoebe was driving, and you said, Phoebe, is that okay if you drive and talk? And I was like, oh, I should turn my camera on as well, because I almost like disconnected and let these guys talk about their important smart stuff and whatever.
Oh,
It's so stupid.
I love you. I love your stupidity. I really do. Yeah.
Andre, I love your honesty. You are probably the only person I've ever heard say they hate their baby. But man, I'm right with you. Yeah, it was. And Andre, when I were little, my the thing I used to hate hearing more than anything else were these old ladies who would say, oh, cherish them at this age. They grow so fast. And I thought, I'm going to be fucking in this place for 40 fucking years. This kid is never going to fucking grow up. I'm going to be waking up in the middle of the night, changing diapers, and just, oh my God, it's tough. It's tough. And what Dennis said is the truth. Just the sleep deprivation alone is brutal. And but you being able to say that to this group, that man, that is one thing I love about you. I love that.
And you can come on more often now, sure you won't be asleep. You'll be awake all the time.
I'm happy to be talking to you now, guys. I'm happy to and Phoebe, thank you for saying this, because it's I I often think that what I am saying or I'm feeling is like everyone's like that. Everyone's saying this, everyone's thinking this, and this is like, and then when you say it, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe.
I think I
And
lost
also,
connection
but
here.
also I think
Yeah.
because we can hear you, but also
Oh.
it's got because I don't I mean, I don't know. I think saying things like that in Canada might trigger social services, and I don't know. I'm kind of I mean, I can joke about it, but maybe those people don't have any sense of humor at all.
And we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pull the plug now. We have to go back to the unreal world and negotiate all sorts of stuff.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Good night.
I know.
Good night.